Okay. Well, hopefully everyone can hear me. Let me know in the chat if you cannot. I can turn up the volume a little bit. There we go. Well, hello. This is Audra, and I haven't done a live stream on this channel for, it's been a long time. Not since, December 13th, 2022, which was also the last episode I put out of my podcast, The Philosopher's Guide to the Apocalypse. Hope to get back into that podcast. At some point, I was starting to write a script. Last night, I almost never write scripts, but it seemed important to write a script for that one because there's been such a long hiatus. But that's neither here nor there. Today, I want to talk about a movie I saw yesterday called I Saw the TV Glow. The movie just came out this year, 2024. And it was just a stupendous movie. I mean, I was strongly considering going back to see it tonight. Probably won't, but I might go see it again. And then I want to talk about, and it's an independent movie, directed by Jane Schoenbrun. I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's an American. They're an American trans femme, non-binary director. I'd never heard of them before this film. They're an indie filmmaker, like I said, and it's a film that's centered around queer issues, or more specifically, trans issues. I guess without further ado, I was going to play the trailer for all of you. And then I thought that would be a good place to start. Give trailer reactions and go from there. So let's see if I can get this to share my screen. There we go. Okay.
Headed to college? We're ready to help. Apply for the money you need for the school year.
I know this might sound crazy. I don't want to alarm you. Do you remember a TV show we used to watch together? It was called...
The Pink Up 8?
Yeah. Do you watch? Each episode, they help each other fight a new monster from across the county. But it's way too scary for most kids.
We're gonna defeat him this time. We're gonna need to harness the full potential of our shared powers.
Sometimes the Pink Opaque feels more real than real life.
Maddie, it was a TV show.
Are you sure that's all it was? I like girls, you know that, right?
Totally, that's fine.
What about you? Do you like girls?
I think that I like TV shows.
It's our destiny.
How can I have a destiny?
Something's wrong. This isn't how life is supposed to feel. Tell me you know it's true.
Maddie, it's just the suburbs.
Seems like you're always somewhere else lately.
Maddie disappeared without a trace. All they found was her TV set burning in the backyard. I told myself I made the right choice. What if I really was someone else? Very far away on the other side of a television screen.
So that gives you a general idea of what the movie is, or is about. So there's these two characters, Maddie and Owen. I should say spoilers. I should probably have titled this stream, like put spoilers in the title. Don't know if there's a way to change the title now, but before I go on, spoilers. So like I said, there's Maddie and there's Owen. Owen's a boy of mixed race. First, he's in the 7th grade when we meet him. And then Maddie, a white girl, is in the 9th grade. And Owen sees these commercials, I guess, of this TV show called The Pink Opaque. And he's fascinated by it, but it's only plays past his bedtime, so he can't watch it. He has strict parents, it's implied. So he meets Maddie, sees she's reading a book, which is apparently, we learn, an episode guide about the Pink Opaque. And they get to talking a little bit, and there's some clever trickery, or I should rather say, Owen tricks his parents into dropping him off at an old friend's house, and then he walks to Maddie's house to watch The Pink Opaque. So that's the setup of the movie. Next, you have, I think it fast forwards like a couple years, and Maddie starts giving Owen, giving him video cassette tapes with all the episodes of The Pink Opaque, because he makes it to the 9th grade and he still isn't allowed to stay up that late. So he just becomes obsessed with that show. He just loves it. He has it practically memorized. And yeah. So the last time he sees Maddie, the last time they hang out at her house to watch The Pink Opaque, she tells him that she's skipping town. She's leaving. She mentioned, I believe this was the first time they hung out, so back when Owen was still in the 7th grade, but I think Maddie mentioned, you got to be out of here by dawn or my father will beat me up again. So it's implied it's an abusive situation. So again, fast forward 2 years, they're having another sleepover, and Maddie says, I'm skipping town. I'm getting out of here. She says, I'm going to die if I stay here. Owen is really upset by this. He doesn't get super upset, but you can tell he's disturbed, disappointed, unhappy. And he says, I'm not going to have anyone to watch The Pink Opaque without you. Doesn't seem like Owen has too many friends. So she says, well, then pack a bag and come with me. Owen decides eventually he can't go through with it. Skipping town, by the way. So he doesn't Maddie disappears. Except her TV screen, her TV set is in her backyard, burning. Other than that, no trace of her. So Owen goes on pretty much living his life. His mother passes away, I believe, from cancer of some sort. He's working at a movie theater, still living with his dad. They don't seem to have the best relationship, although we don't see much of. We see a little more of Owen's mom than his dad. So yeah, his going through the motions. His life's not too interesting. He's at the grocery store shopping one night, and this stranger. He sees a stranger looking at him, and automatically you can tell it's Maddie, but with much shorter hair and looking disheveled. Like dirt was on her. So they reunite happily and end up going to like a little bar restaurant with a concert going in the background. I don't know what that's called, like a dive bar. What is a dive bar, actually? I don't even think I know what a dive bar is. Dive bar is typical small, unglamorous, electric old-style drinking establishment with inexpensive drinks. Oh, that might be what it is. I don't know. Anyway, they go to a bar. And there's a band playing in the background. And Owen's trying to get her to say, "Where have you been? Like, are you going to go to the police? Does your mom know you're here? Like, open up. I'm worried. What's going on?" She says, "I'll answer everything in due time, but please answer me this. Do you remember a TV show we watched as kids called The Pingo Pig?" Owen says, "Well, yes, of course I do. It's my favorite TV show." And then Maddie is basically like, was it just a TV show? Do you remember it as just a TV show? Or do you notice having some discrepancies between real life and the TV show? Or I should rather say, did the TV show and real life seem to blend in for you at all? Is it hard to distinguish one from the other? And then she says, like, "That's where I've been." And it's real. And like she says, the bad guy in it, Mr. Melancholy, I believe is called, is real, and all the rest. Owen is kind of freaked out by this, doesn't believe it. But eventually she convinces him to meet her at their old high school. And she explains further, like, that she moved to Kansas City, I think. Got a job somewhere, and changed her name. Later on, she's, when Owen calls her Maddie, she emphasizes, like, "That's not my name. That's not my name. I'm not Maddie." But we don't get any other name for her, so that's why I'm gonna keep using that name. So yeah, she says, moved town, worked a bit, and then she's like, "My life just didn't feel right. Time's not supposed to go this way. The span of a life is not supposed to go this way. I feel like there's something wrong with me." At one point, she apparently paid someone to bury her alive. She didn't die, but she was successfully buried alive, but she did not die, thankfully. She somehow managed to crawl her way up to the surface. And I think it's probably not long after that she went to find Ellen. So I should wrap back around, talk a little bit about that TV show, The Pink Opaques. I think the rest of the plot won't make sense if I don't do that. I've already said this, but spoilers. So the Pink Opaque is about these two girls, primarily. Although there might be other side characters as well. And, they have a really special bond, and sort of like a, Scooby-Doo-ish type mysteries. Like there's a monster or bad guy that they have to defeat every week. Each of them has like little tattoos of a ghost on there. Or I don't know if tattoos, but markings of a ghost on their neck. Isabel is one of their names, and I'm forgetting the name of the other one. The name Isabel will come in. Will be important to a bit of the plot. Let's see. Tara, that's it. And there's also this overarching villain in the show. He's called Mr. Melancholy. And he has the face of... his face is on the moon. It's like a moon man, moon person kind of thing. And that the TV show, The Pink Opaque, in the movie, ends with both characters being buried alive. And I think something like, is it moon juice or something? Some liquid being fed to them, which maybe presumably turns them into moon people. That part wasn't entirely spelled out in the movie. So that's how their favorite show, The Pink Opaque, ends. Kind of a bleak ending, needless to say. But nevertheless, so returning to Owen and Maddie. So Maddie is saying to Owen, like, I've come back to save you. So more or less, it's like we've both been buried. We've both been buried by Mr. Melancholy, and I came back, and we need to go back there to, this, I guess, land of the Pink Opaque, or this realm or whatever, to save ourselves. And the longer we wait, the more it's likely we'll die from suffocation. So basically, Maddie and Owen are according to Maddie anyway, are in the same place that Tara and Isabel are in their show. This freaks out Owen. He punches Maddie in the stomach and runs off. And that's the last he ever sees of Maddie. I believe there's one final scene with her in it where she writes in like pink chalk on, I'm assuming, the street that Owen lives on, "There's still time." But in the course of the movie, after that, he doesn't see her again. After that, turns out the movie theater he's working for closes, so he starts working in an arcade instead, kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese type place or a Gaddy Town type place. These references mean anything to anyone. And so he's near the very end of the movie, they are giving Owen and his coworkers are singing "Happy Birthday" for the little boy at a party. And this is, I should say, at this point, that's like 28 years into the future. And so, 20 years according to Wikipedia. Okay. So he's much older at this point, presumably, I would say, I'm guessing like 40s or something. And he ends up screaming in the middle of this party, screaming that he's dying. Only has asthma, by the way. That's another detail. Then he ends up in the bathroom by himself. One of his coworkers, knocks on the door, trying to check on him. And he says, "Fine." He says, "I'm fine. I'll be out in a minute." There's a scene where he starts cutting down his chest with a box cutter. There's not blood or anything. It's just straight cut. And then there's a scene of him pulling his chest, like, partly open. And then we see, like, the static, like TV static and noise and things of that sort, like, coming out of his chest. And the next scene, he's back in the arcade, apologizing to everybody for his screaming. And scene. The movie ends at that point. That's a lot of detail. I'll try to put all the puzzle pieces together so the details make more sense. The movie is about, more or less, I should say also it's a horror movie. Although it's not a slasher, not Michael Myers type horror, not like The Conjuring type horror. It's not really any jump scares in it. I almost want to say it's more like psychological type horror, although it's probably psychological type horror of a very specific kind. Some psychological horror still has a lot of gore and killing and blood and but I guess I mean psychological horror in the sense of wondering if you're crazy, wondering if you're losing your mind, wondering if you're losing touch with reality. And that's definitely a big theme in this movie. So you see the I would say the TV show more or less is a symbolic manifestation of a different life for these characters. It is a fictionalized portrayal of more or less who they could be, which is less about being mystery-solving youngins, but being their true selves. So like I mentioned, the name Isabel would become really important. Well, there's a scene in the movie. I mean, Isabel's also, first and foremost, one of the two main characters in The Pink Opaque. But there's a scene when they go to when Maddie and Owen go to the football stadium, which is at the point where Maddie's saying, we've been buried alive. We need to go save ourselves. Before Owen punches her in the stomach and runs off. There's at one point where Maddie calls Owen Isabel. Grabs his hand and calls him Isabel. And there are a few scenes. They're very few and scattered, but there's a few scenes where we see glimpses of Owen in a pink dress. Not dissimilar from, I think, what the character Isabel in the Pink Opaque is wearing. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Maddie is asserting later on that, Maddie is not my name. Don't call me that. She never gets another name, but she's making it clear that I don't want to be associated with that name. So, I think it's fair to say that these two characters are trans in the universe. And that really the entire movie is a depiction of the horror experienced by trans people, particularly those who aren't out of the closet, and well, even more so those who don't come out of the closet. When we first meet these characters, they both seem very withdrawn. They both seem to not have a great deal of life to them, almost like zombies, very disassociated. Don't seem to hang out with other people that much. The one friend we see Maddie hanging out with early in the movie, whose name is... I'm not sure what the Wikipedia article says. I don't think it says, but we do see Maddie with one friend at the beginning of the movie, excuse me. But then we fast forward 2 years, and she calls that person an asshole, and apparently that girl had spread some rumor around the school that Maddie had touched her breast, which Maddie denies. Owen seems even more withdrawn, more lifeless, more dissociated. Literally someone just going through the motions. Shows very little emotion. Really until the end, when he's just showing sheer breathtaking terror. He basically, it's almost like he's, keeping everything bottled up until the end. He just explodes. But I say all this because, so beginning with these characters, very withdrawn. Owen, unfortunately, there's not really too much character growth in that respect. Maddie, we see presumably some character growth because, she takes off, she disappears, and when she's back, she looks more or less like a different person. As I've mentioned several times already now, emphasizing that she doesn't go by her old name. Her clothes are different, her hair is different. and she's trying to lead Owen to a similar path, trying to more or less persuade and coax Owen into allowing himself to be a different person. And so it's you can see the movie as more or less a cautionary tale. But both a cautionary tale, but also a cautionary tale that provides some hope. I mean, from the character Owen's perspective, it's life is hopeless, more or less. But with Maddie, with the change we do see in Maddie over the course of the film, that can, I think, provide a model, I guess, for anybody watching who, say, is struggling with gender identity, feels like they're just living the life of somebody else, but doesn't know how to not do that. Maddie not only is the guide of Owen in the in-universe, but it almost serves as the guide to the audience itself. Saying it's not too late, saying we need to save ourselves from being suffocated. And that's what it's like being in the closet. Well, I mean, as a trans person, a gay person, bisexual person, what have you. It can feel very suffocating. It can take it can take the color out of life, I should say. It can feel like something's wrong with you, and you can more or less not even know what is wrong with you. You just feel like there's something off. But what? You don't know, right? And that is, I think, the aspect that lends itself really well to horror. I wouldn't say there's something. I was trying to write a little bit about this last night, but I was struggling to find the words. There's nothing inherently horrifying about the queer experience or the trans experience, I would say. It's not. If there's anything horrifying about the queer experience or the trans experience, it is contextual. It is contingent on certain cultural and historical circumstances. I think that's fair. I mean, from the wrong or from the narrow, incorrect perspective of many people throughout human history, there has been something inherently horrifying in about the LGBT community because it's been thought up to be immoral, wrong, degenerate. Insert negative adjective here. So there has been that association. And you can see this in movies and TV shows, probably literature and other forms of media as well. Often many villains in shows are very queer-coded, which again reflects the dynamics of seeing queer people as the evil other, seeing queer people as some negative disruptive force that must be fought against. That's how it would seem from the traditional cishet gaze, shall we say. But I would say it can be horrifying from a subjective standpoint, it can be horrifying from an experiential standpoint to be queer, to be trans, because of the difficulty coming into one's own, as it were, because of the hurdles that have to be jumped through, the concepts that have to be taken on, the trauma that has to be unpacked. And I wrote a paper actually about this. So I was in an epistemology class in my last spring. I'm a graduate student. As I've said before, I'm a graduate student in philosophy. I'm in a 2-year master's program right now, and the school doesn't have a PhD program. So after the master's, I'd have to go to a different school if I wanted to pursue my education further. Anyway, excuse me. So I wrote a paper for epistemology, and it was titled, give me a second. The Role of Testimony in the Trans Experience, an essay in social epistemology, which maybe I should read on stream sometime. I'm proud of that paper. I think I like the topic. It's not in any publishable form right now, but it's something that could be worked on, I believe. But I bring this all up to say that in that paper, I'm more or less arguing that when a trans person is young, they assume they're cisgender. They very well might assume they're heterosexual and cisgender. Oh, maybe some trans people sort of figure out some sexuality stuff beforehand. And they assume these things more or less because that's all they know. Because everyone else is cisgender and heterosexual. So why would it be any different for you? Why would you somehow be the exception to the rule? Give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure this I can hear myself on stream when I click on it. Oh, I was muted. That would probably be why I wasn't hearing myself. It caught the audio though, so we're good. Anyway, I go on side tangents. Back to my paper. When you're trans, you think you are like everybody else because, again, that makes sense. That's just sort of intuitively where your mind would go. And another way of putting that, I would think, is you more or less lack some kind of knowledge. You more or less lack a sort of conceptual framework by which, or you accept a kind of language by which you can understand and explain and interpret your experience. And this sort of relates to Miranda Fricker. She's I think a British feminist philosopher in the Wikipedia says analytic tradition. One of my professors did not think she was analytic. I'm not going to get the analytic continental split about the analytic continental split in philosophy here, but anyway, she's a contemporary feminist philosopher, and she's written about these concepts. I think she more or less coined the terms hermeneutical injustice and testimonial injustice. Hermeneutical injustice is a injustice of interpretation. So you can't interpret something, or you're prevented from being able to interpret something in your life. And then, testimonial injustice is your testimony is discarded unjustly. I think I had a point to that. It'll come back to me. But anyway, I think I would view it through I would view the trans experience of to go from not knowing yourself to knowing yourself as a sort of path to finding a certain kind of knowledge. Of course, what's the constituents of self-knowledge? Can't answer that question here. Didn't do so in the paper, certainly, but if you and everyone else have specific linguistic conceptual frameworks to interpret your experience, but your experience doesn't fall into the typical realm of interpretation, that puts you at an epistemic disadvantage, right? You are epistemically impoverished. You're ignorant. Don't mean that in a pejorative sense. You just don't know what you don't know. And so in my paper, I argue that testimony, so the what I call direct testimony, so actual interactions with other with trans people and trans communities on the one hand, and then more indirect testimony, so through memoirs written by trans people or novels written by trans people or trans characters depicted on TV shows, and that through those two sorts of testimony, a person can learn. A person can acquire the self-knowledge, and then they're able to, ideally, come out as transgender. And then, maybe hopefully they can sort of return their favor to other baby queers in the future, and sort of the cycle continues. It's how would you put it? It's a kind of group knowledge in a way, kind of insider knowledge, a kind of, you can only know this you can only know this through being a certain way, I guess. Now I wish I don't remember. I went on a rant about my paper, and now I'm trying. How was I going to tie that to I saw the TV glow? I guess it would be shoot. It's the trouble with going on rants is you start to forget what you were even talking about. Well, I guess I could say it like this, so that I'll move forward. But I think So Maddie and Owen in the beginning of the movie, I would say, they lack a kind of knowledge. They lack the, as I keep saying, linguistic or conceptual framework to describe their own emotions, describe their own experience. Owen, he seems not only to not know what his gender identity is, but not know what his sexuality is. Because there's actually a scene early in the movie when after I think they haven't talked to each other for a little bit, but like about a year or so, and Owen asks if they can go watch. This is like the scene before their last sort of like sleepover. He asks if he can come over again to watch the Pink Opaque, and Maddie's like, I like girls, right? So at least one of the characters, Maddie, we know early on Maddie does like girls. But then she asks Owen, like, do you like girls? Do you like boys? And he says, I like TV shows. It's a funny response, but I think one that points in the direction of what I'm trying to say, which is not only does he not know his gender identity, he doesn't even know his sexuality. He seems completely disconnected. Whereas even early on, Maddie seems a bit more connected with herself than Owen does, which is probably why she ends up trying to be sort of the guide for Owen and for the audience. A epistemic helper, if you will. And no, as I think I already mentioned, it's not a happy film. I kind of went out of that film feeling pretty uncomfortable. And again, not because it was bad at all. I thought the cinematography was good. I thought the acting was good. I thought the visuals were good. Like the color scheme, mix, a good mix of dark and light colors, depending on the context. I probably will go see it at least one more time, either in theaters or maybe I'll be lazy and just rent it online. I think you can rent it for like $20 through like Amazon Prime or something. But it is it was just talking about things that were so that touched on my lived experience so clearly and so accurately that it was overwhelming to see. And I should say, as a trans woman, I've been out for about 2 years now, which, I mean, it's not too long, but it's not too short either. It's a good amount of time. And I think more or less I'm feeling more and more myself, trying to explore my wardrobe more and just trying to explore my own identity more. Recently I'm having more sexuality struggles than gender struggles. I'm quite comfortable in my identity as a woman, but although there's still some internalized transphobia I gotta work through. Anyway, this stream isn't supposed to be my diary, but I bring that all up, I guess, to say that, of course, if you've watched it up to this point, I guess it's all been spoiled for you. Sorry about that. But I would recommend people go watch this movie, particularly, trans people. particularly, I would hope, and I think this will probably be the case, but I would hope that this can actually help more trans people come out. Because, as I said, it's a cautionary tale. The horror comes from the fact that, Owen, the main character, never comes out. And it clearly destroys him inside. It's clearly killing him. He clearly doesn't experience really any joy in his life. Clearly doesn't have a sense of self. And you don't want to end up like Owen. Of course, we don't know how Maddie ends up, but more or less you want to follow in the direction of Maddie. And that's why it's probably powerful for when she writes on the street that there is still time. And there is still time for anybody watching this, any trans people watching this or in the closet. I will always say, there is still time. Common phrase, I think, in trans spaces is like the best time to transition was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. The second best time is now. Time is something else I should probably mention in the context of this film. A couple other things, actually. I should write this down. But there is, I think, a tendency, or let me put it like this. Like, if you go to, like, trans subreddits, for example, you will see, people saying, like, I'm this age, I'm 23, I'm 18, I'm 30, I don't know. Is it too late for me to transition? This thought or this anxiety, I think in large part comes from the fact that, your results can depend, not necessarily, but very possibly depend on the age you transition. So people who are able to transition, say, in their mid-teens, probably, though not always, going to have better outcomes, going to pass more, shall we say, going to be recognized as their gender the gender they identify as, more than if you transition later in life. Keep adding the caveats. I think it's important. It's not always true. I don't think I look super feminine myself, but I started transitioning, like I said, 2 years ago. 24 now, so started about when I was like 22, and I get gendered correctly more these days. But just whatever age you are, it is never too late, and you should never. It doesn't really pay to worry like, oh, it's too late. Oh, I'm not going to look the way I want to look. I'm not going to look as like this person who was able to transition when they were 15. That thought process is just going to hurt you in the end. It's only going to inhibit your growth as a person. You should allow yourself to be happy regardless of what age you're transitioning in. And, even apart from age, you should, allow yourself to be happy regardless of what other people think. Now, some people are in the closet or going stealth for safety reasons, which is totally valid. No one should ever be shamed for that reason. You got to look out for yourself. And if you have to be in the closet for another year or so, or go out in boy or girl mode for a certain period of time, or when you're around family or something, for your safety's sake, and by all means, do what you think you need to do to make sure you make it to the next day. But if you think you can come out safely, then I would encourage you to strongly consider doing so. I mean, nobody can tell you whether or not you're trans, right? So don't listen to a random girly pop on the internet. I'm not going to say whether any of you are or are not trans. That's totally a personal. That's a personal journey that can only be answered by the individual. Well, I mean, there's no real but to that. That's a more or less a self-contained statement. I guess I would just want to add that when you think it's time, again, as long as you feel you're safe, don't hesitate. Don't prevent yourself from being the person you think you're meant to be. And it's hard. I mean, I first realized I was trans. Keep talking about myself. I first realized I was trans about 15, maybe 14, 15. Didn't come out until 22, right? So it's a good chunk of time. I totally repressed those feelings, totally ignored them, let them fester. Didn't do me any good, I don't think. And when I did finally come out, I think I was a much healthier, happier person. So I guess the point being is, as I get it, that it's hard, and then you don't have to rush yourself at all. But there does come a point where not coming out has diminishing returns. Not coming out has way more costs than benefits. And we should work towards a society where people can more or less come out safely wherever they are and whoever they are. I guess enough said about that. I guess a couple other things I wanted to talk about in regards to I Saw the TV Glow. And then I thought I might look at a couple TikToks I saw with reactions to the film. And I guess I'd wrap it up from there. So one thing I want to touch on is we'll do the reality point first. So the movie does a great job. Gotta back up a bit. So when you're, let's say, in the closet as a trans person, I think it can be difficult to figure out what's real, figure out who you really are, and it can be scary when you first think, when the thought comes to you, I might be trans. I mean, that can genuinely be a terrifying feeling. Because then it's like your whole world kind of falls apart in a way. Your whole world, more or less, is ripped from you. And who you thought you were is not who you are. So that in itself is an example, I would say, of people struggling to understand reality, understand what is real, understand where they fit into reality, or you could even say understand the reality of themselves. So that's one point. I guess another point would be the movie itself does a great job playing with the audience's sense of reality. So there's certain cutaway scenes that you're not quite sure what is or is not real. So like the cutaway scenes where we see glimpses of Owen, or should I say Isabel, in a dress, or the scene where he's ripping his chest in two. Is that real? Or there's another scene where Owen's watching a TV and he literally something in him snaps and he just smashes his head into the TV. Then his father pulls him out of the TV, takes him to the shower, and puts his head under the shower head to deal with the assuming electrical burns. It's like, did that actually happen? So that's a layer to the movie. Is there's scenes where, I suspect, or at least I interpreted some of them as far more metaphorical than real. But the movie doesn't elaborate. And I think that's presumably intentional. I think it's almost an attempt of getting the audience to feel the kind of unreality that goes into the trans experience. Feeling your unreality unravel, or not knowing what is real. So that's sort of an interesting, meta. I don't know if meta is the right word, but it's an interesting sort of layer, I guess, to the movie, because again, in universe, the characters are questioning their reality, but then the movie's set up in such a way that you question the character's reality. And so, the whole movie has a very eerie, surrealist feeling to it. I don't know if you'd call it magical realism. But yeah, because at first, it just seems like a very, realistic movie. It just seems like to depict the world more or less as it is. But then over time, it seems to get less and less realistic and more surreal. And that could also tie it all back together. It could also be a representation of the trans experience. That could be a representation of the trans experience. When you're in your slumber in the closet. Things seem pretty normal, but as your life gets more and more confusing, and maybe you get some bits and pieces of information here, then yeah, it can seem like life is more surreal, more absurdist, more confusing, less straightforward. Speaking of straightforward, actually, before I get to that point, the movie also makes you think about the concept of fandom, because of course these two characters are obsessed with this TV show, The Pink Opaque, and they seem to get lost in that show, as I've been saying, to the point where reality seems to blend into television. Which, you can think of in a couple different ways, I would say. You can think of it through the lens of when your own life is painful or confusing, or even dull, you can turn to fiction. You can turn to media as a way to cope. You can absorb yourself. You can get lost in fiction, in whatever form, as a way of ignoring reality. I don't think that's inherently an experience, that only LGBTQ people experience. I think that's probably an experience most human beings have. That's probably why fiction and mythology and religious worldviews and philosophies and all the rest of it exist, because we need, we're kind of storytelling creatures. We need ways to explain life, death, the universe, and everything to ourselves, and so we can get lost in fiction, with the paradox, I guess, being that almost by getting lost in fiction, that can be your way back to reality, if that makes sense. Or should I rather say, if your reality, if I should rather say a lot. If I should rather say, I say, I can't talk. You could say that if your reality lacks the interpretive tools you need, you might seek them out unconsciously through fiction, and then through fiction, you can say maybe acquire some interpretive tools, and then that can wrap back around to how you interpret the world as a whole. Which sort of connects to one of the points in my paper I was talking about indirect testimony. So I keep talking about myself today, but so I read a book in high school. I don't remember the name of it now. It was a young adult book, like a novella. And it was about a trans girl. And I remember reading that book. And it was like a light bulb moment for me. Like, I just immediately related to the main character. And that was like, I don't know if it was my first realization, but it was like one of the milestones, one of the big, one of the important moments in my journey. to the point where it inspired me to try to write my own novella about a trans girl, which I still have a copy of somewhere. It's a very depressing novella, to be honest. Not sure I'd be interested in having anyone read it now. I was in a very bad headspace in high school, and so that seeped into the fiction, I think. But I think that novella sort of helped give me the interpretive tools to explain how I was feeling and what my life had been like. So you could also another point regarding fandoms. You could also well, I don't know, maybe you'd say two things. I mean, I guess sometimes fandoms are annoying. No shocker there. That's not profound wisdom by any means. That's just common knowledge, particularly if you spend too much time on the internet like I do. So fandoms can be annoying, and people can, I would say, do things, irrational things, that they more likely than not wouldn't do because of the fandom. So, I mean, I have seared into my brain, like, I think one of those videos of some young man, like, I guess was it at Wendy's? Was it Wendy's who had some Szechuan sauce at some point? And so, yeah, this young man was on the counter screaming, "I'm Pickle Rick." So he's from the Rick and Morty fandom. Rick and Morty is very overrated. I just want to lay that hot take out there. Not a huge fan. I mean, it's okay. It's not terrible. I've watched some episodes, gotten some laughs, but it's not high level. It's not high level television by any means. So, there is, I think, worry, or there is talk among people about negative aspects of fandoms. I have to say, I don't particularly think this movie really touches on that. So I guess I can let that point go. There was one other point. Oh, yes. Shoot, I lost it again. You think I'd be better at this by now? I feel like I've done enough streams and YouTube videos, but I'm still not great at talking extemporaneously, so go figure. I don't know. I was trying to make some point about how inundated we are with the image, the image-driven society we live in, and how that relates to fandom in the movie. But now the point has lost me. Okay, well, I guess it's not going to come back. If it does, I'll try to squeeze it in. I want to talk about time also. So time, or more specifically, queer time. Because one of the things that Maddie talks about in the movie is feeling like time isn't supposed to work like that. Like I'm not supposed to be experiencing time the way I'm experiencing it. Now, I think that's a crucial point for understanding this movie and for understanding the queer experience in general, because, as and I'm not an expert on queer time by any stretch of the imagination. I haven't really read too much literature about it. I've come across the concept here and there. But more or less, queer time is the idea that queer people experience time differently. Or to put it another way, the boundaries of a lived life, the milestones of a lived life are blurrier for queer people. And that makes sense because, if at least in the 21st century in America, and it's probably true for many other parts of the world as well, most of the world, I assume. Don't know why I made that particular geographical distinction. So we sort of, think about a human life as you're born, go to school. Nowadays, K through 12, then you get a bachelor's degree. After that, unless you go off to some special training in grad school or med school or law school or something, you go into the workforce after your bachelor's degree, or go into the workforce after your specialized training, get married, have children, retire, die. That's pretty much, how the typical understanding of how a human life goes from beginning to end. Now, that doesn't work for many queer people. Many queer people don't have children, for example. Or you can experience things at a later age than your cisgendered peers. So, keep talking about myself, so why would I stop now? Getting glimpses into the mind of Audra. I know someone who would greatly enjoy that, actually. Anyway. I've only been out as a woman for about 2 years, like I said, right? So for most of my life, I experienced it as a man. Or closest thing to a man, I guess, that I could be. And so that means, certain aspects of womanhood or girlhood or however you want to put it are only coming into awareness for me now in my early 20s. Or I don't know, 24 is early or mid 20s. Anyway, in my early to mid 20s, certain things are becoming known to me that weren't known before. That they, things that would be known to, say, a cis woman from early on, who was raised as a girl. So I'm like having to learn things that other women that cisgender women just absorb naturally based on social information and how their parents raised them and so forth. Or a gay person or a trans person might experience their first kiss later, or they might not have sex for the first time until later in their life, because it just didn't make sense to them at an earlier age. So there's queer people don't fit into the transitional Freudian slip. Queer people don't fit into the traditional framing of a life. And so that can make you feel like you're behind. That can make you feel like you should be farther along at your age than you are. Like, I think at my age, my grandparents were married, and I don't think they had their first child till he was 25. But so they were married and close to having their first child, right? Nowhere near doing either for myself. And I too did feel like I was behind my peers developmentally in a lot of ways. And I think that this movie does a good job emphasizing that point. Time in that movie is, I don't know if it's depicted in a particularly strange way. Nevertheless, it does have, it does fast forward in time, like 2 years, I think, probably another 10 after that, and maybe another 20 after that. Now I'm forgetting, but it does fast forward in time quite a bit. Which can, I guess, further emphasize, how time just slips away from people, and that's why some trans people never come out till later in life, till after they've married and have kids, right? That happens. Some trans people don't even come out to their old age. It's probably true more of the older generations. I think the younger generations are transitioning a little bit sooner. People younger than me are transitioning even sooner. So I think that's changing. But it does sort of add the impetus to, if you're going to transition, do it now. Might as well. Why not, right? Why be miserable for another 20 years when you could start to begin to be happy this year? I was trying to think if there's anything else time related to that movie. I don't think so, but I just thought that the character's emphasis on feeling like time wasn't moving correctly, that stuck in my mind. And as I say, is an important point. An important point about queer experience. All right, then. I was going to, I think, show a couple TikToks, people reacting to the movie, and then I guess call it a day. Pull that up here. Won't show too many, but I aim for about an hour and a half. It's already hour 24, so might go a little over, but try not to go to my liked videos. So here's one person.
This isn't how life's supposed to be. This isn't how life's supposed to be. This isn't how life's supposed to be.
So that one, I was trying to, how can I? Give me 1 second. Might have to mute myself. Okay, it's going to read the caption. Didn't want to play it 20 billion times. I came out to the movie theater a completely new person after seeing this movie 4 weeks ago. My entire mindset is flipped. I'm no longer afraid of change. I'm exactly who I'm meant to be. There is still time. And all I can say is, that's wonderful. Keep going. You're on the right track. I'm proud of you. Stranger on the internet. Here's another one.
Time wasn't right. This isn't how life's supposed to be.
So, again, I'll look at the captions here. So that's the movie poster. Realizing that, the person says, the scene with Owen's head going through the television was Owen trying to come out and break through, but his father physically held him back and hurt him. That's a good point. With no one holding back Maddie, she disappeared and was able to experience part of discovering herself, coming back strange, and Owen never got it. But there is still time, they say. All good points. Yeah, that part about Owen not getting it, I think, is important to emphasize. That's the tragedy of the story, if you will, is part of him, like, deep down gets it, but he doesn't want to admit that he gets it. He doesn't want to admit that, Maddie does have a point, that he isn't who he thinks he is, or he is more like that person on the other side of the TV screen. And then, yeah, the point about, I think I talked about it a little, his father, or him smashing his head in the television and his father pulling him out. You could interpret that as him trying to get to the other side, him trying to be that person he is, or that person who represents who we could be in the TV show. You could interpret that as him, trying to come into his own, trying to become himself, and him being trapped in a different world, more or less. Here's another one. So this one's more of a sadder one, but I thought it was important to show it. This person says, me before I saw the TV glow. I got all dressed up and went all by myself as a treat. I was so excited. I love her makeup. Gosh. Me after I saw the TV glow, and they're crying. I don't know this person's pronouns. So, teenagers in the back row wouldn't stop making transphobic/homophobic comments the whole time at the end. I stood up, turned around, and told them to have at least a little bit of fucking respect, and I told them how they ruined this extremely important movie for me. They laughed and then called me a faggot on my way out to the theater. The movie was so beautiful and emotional. I was sobbing the whole time, hearing 5 teenagers behind me snicker and crack homophobic jokes the entire time. Take care of your queer friends, please. Shout out to this person. That's terrible that their viewing experience was tainted by idiotic teenagers who most likely absorbed their intolerant beliefs from their family and maybe friends. I think one commenter was like, why would you even go to that showing if you're homophobic and transphobic? And I'm like, yeah, I don't get that part either. But people are weird. But yeah, shout out to that person. Hopefully, maybe they can go see it again and not be bothered by assholes. Pardon my French. Let me see if there's any others. Because I found out about this movie through TikTok. So TikTok did improve my life for once. Let's see. That might have been all the ones I favorited. But I think it's definitely getting a strong reaction out of it.
They had alarm clocks in ancient Greece.
That was not what I wanted. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think that was the... Actually, this one might also be... So the caption reads, this movie was mid. This is in quotes. This movie was mid. I didn't get it. And the person says, well, I actually got it so much that I couldn't leave the theater until the credits had ended because I had been sobbing uncontrollably for the entirety of them and felt too embarrassed to leave. Sending love this person's way as well, and good vibes. It was definitely an emotional experience, so if anyone does go see it, you got to be prepared for it hitting you hard. It didn't happen to make me cry, but that's just totally anecdotal. So yeah, overall it seems like people are responding, or queer people are really liking this movie and responding to it very positively. And yeah, I guess there'd be other TikToks, I'm sure, talking about it, but I won't belabor the point. Stop sharing. Gotcha. Okay. Well, I think that was more or less what I wanted to cover today. I didn't really get to... I talked a little bit about how the horror genre relates to the queer experience. No, I think I talked about that enough. I was going to say I didn't really get to talk about that, but I think I'm not super well informed on that topic, so I probably wouldn't have an incredible great deal to say about it anyway. But I like horror movies, and so probably a topic we'll talk about more on this channel. And yeah, so I saw The TV Glow. Wonderful movie. Highly recommend it. And yeah, props to the director, Jane Schoenbrun. Sorry if I mispronounced their name. Props to the actors, particularly Justin Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne, who played the two main characters. I very likely will go see this in theaters at least one more time. I just liked it that much. It'd be nice if I could see it with somebody, but I don't know if that will turn out. I might just go and see it myself again. I used to think I was like such a loser for going to see movies in theaters by myself, but I've begun to get over that fear. I feel like there's nothing wrong with going out and doing things with yourself. And that going out and doing things with yourself is actually a sign of increased self-esteem and self-care and self-worth. So yeah, never feel free or never be scared of going to movies by yourself. If you don't have anyone else to go, if you don't have anyone to go to see this movie with, still go. Nothing wrong with that at all. Okay, well, on that note, I will end it here. Thank you for watching. This is Audra, and this is streaming on my YouTube channel, Your Politics is Cringe. It used to be titled The Anti-Philosopher, then I changed it. Well, first I changed it to Your Politics Was Gay, but then someone made a YouTube comment saying that seems like a homophobic thing to say, and I was worried about that, so I just changed it to Your Politics is Cringe. I don't know, I'm not really fully satisfied with that title either. But we'll see. I'm starting up a second YouTube channel called Sincerely Yours, Audra. So go subscribe to me over there. Subscribe to me or follow me on TikTok at That Philosophy Bitch. Follow me on Twitch at That Philosophy Girl. Don't use my Twitch that much, but I want to start getting into that. And then, as I said at the beginning of the show, or beginning of the live stream, I want to try to get back into my podcast, The Philosopher's Guide to the Apocalypse. 10 episodes of it already uploaded from the past, although that was back before I came out, so you'll hear my dead name on there, unfortunately. But I hate to delete all my podcasts and old YouTube videos just because of that. So feel free to go check that out as well, and keep an eye out for hopefully an upcoming episode of that podcast. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your day or night or morning or whatever time it is when you're watching this. And take care.